Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about something. We're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're talking about Critical Role, and we're going to talk about the camera. I'm going to say this right now. It's right at this front. You have, in my humble opinion, you have never seen Critical Role play Dungeons and Dragons, not once. All right, so let's get to it. Once you stream or record and publish, and I'm just going to say record going forward for record and publish. Actually, I don't even think you need to publish, because if you're recording people, if you even turn the camera on, you record and then never publish, it's still going to change what happens at the table. So here's the thing. In 1974, Gary Gygax created this incredible, human improvement engine called, in my humble opinion, that everybody else thinks is a game, called Dungeons and Dragons, right? So he created Dungeons and Dragons, and he created this space, this table, right? It's one, you can adjust these numbers a little bit, but one DM and 4 players, right? And he's like, at this table, there is truth, and there is passion, and there is adventure, and there is imagination, and there is wisdom, and there is philosophy, and all of those, okay? The second you turn the camera on, all that goes away. And the reason why is, if you sit down at your kitchen table as a dungeon master with 4 players, and you take out the Dungeons and Dragons books and you play together, you are playing Dungeons and Dragons. The second you turn the camera on that, it stops being a Dungeons and Dragons game, and what it becomes is a show that depicts Dungeons and Dragons play. And here's why. Especially now, right? Like, I don't think people understand how. I'm positive of this. People have no idea how much the camera has changed the world. I have a $600 bike that I dropped $900 into. I have a $1,000 bike. Okay, over the last 3 years, I don't lock it anymore. I don't even bother. And the reason why is nobody touches it. Right? Nowhere. I go into Philadelphia. I stay where I'm home. I ride around my neighborhood. I don't bother locking my bike anymore. And the reason why is everybody knows you touch that bike, there's a camera on it, and they're going to find you. And nobody wants to pay a penalty for a bike theft that they know is going to be ridiculously easy to catch the culprit. Right? Like, catching criminals has become pedantic. Like, it has become, it's just the easiest thing in the world to do, right? There's so many things that are changed. Like, they have a special on John Wayne Gacy right now. Serial killers are done. Like, you do one, you do 2, right? And then on the, before you even get to your 3rd, some podcast has popped up, and they're done. They're finished. They're never going to rack up the body counts that Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, those high number killers put down, right? That's never coming again, right? And the camera has fundamentally changed our society. So the second you put on that camera, first thing you do is you restrict a ton of speech, right? In-jokes are out, right? Because it needs to be accessible to the people who are watching, right? And then a whole bunch of relationship material where, the people in my crew, we bust stones, man. People say rude things to each other all the time because we know each other, right? And insults are welcome, right? Like, because we're like, our relationship is deep enough where you're going to say something cruel, I'm going to say something cruel, but that's actually an affirmation between us that our relationship is strong, and we've reached a point where we could bust stones, right? Like, that goes away because a lot of people, when that thing goes public, people aren't going to understand that relationship, right? A whole bunch of speech stops immediately. And with that speech is freedom. The second that camera goes on, everything you say needs to be publicly acceptable, right? And that shuts a ton of stuff down, right? The other thing is, this year we had a player whose mother died, right? When that player returns to the game, right, we have the space, because my crew, we have the space to have a more somber, slower pace when that player returns, right? And the reason why is we need that, right? Critical Role can't be like, oh, Laura Bailey's mom died, so the game's going to suck this week, right? Like they can't. They have to feed the beast, right? And the second you turn that camera on, you stop playing Dungeons and Dragons and you start creating a show that depicts Dungeons and Dragons. They are fundamentally different things. You have never seen Critical Role play Dungeons and Dragons. It's also quite possible that Critical Role has never played Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason why is, Critical Role came there was a period before where they were just playing as friends. Critical Role was like the knowing acknowledgement among everyone, this is going public, right? And now, I want to be super clear, okay? That does make what Matthew Mercer is doing less valuable than a kitchen table game that is non-recorded. No two ways about it, okay? However, it doesn't devalue. It makes it, and actually, it's just slightly, it's hierarchy just a little bit lower, right? Like, I wouldn't trade I wouldn't trade a single kitchen table game, non-recorded, anywhere in the world with a good DM and 4 engaged players. If you said, hey, you have to shut down one real kitchen table game that's not recorded, 1 DM and 4 people, their game ends, or Critical Role goes away. I would definitely get rid of Critical Role. No two ways about it, okay? Now, here's the kicker, though. It is absolutely not, it doesn't set the value of what Critical Role is doing at 0, okay? So let's say there's no perfect game. So let's say, the best non-recorded 1 DM 4 player game in the world right now, let's put that at a 99. I actually think what Mercer is doing, which is not Dungeons and Dragons, its value is 95. And the reason why is it is incredibly helpful for people to see this sketch, this beautiful illustration of what a Dungeons and Dragons campaign actually looks like. And the detail is incredibly high, right? Like, if you take a beautiful painting, that doesn't have the same value as a real person, or just even seeing that person with your own eyes. But it still has incredible value, right? Like, somebody who saw Mona Lisa in person, that's an incredible real thing, right? The painting of the Mona Lisa is not the Mona Lisa, right? That's not Mona Lisa. It's a depiction of her, and it has incredible value, right? But not the same value as Mona Lisa herself, right? And so the reality is, the second you turn a camera on, your D&D ends and a show starts. A show that very closely depicts Dungeons and Dragons. Very closely depicts Dungeons and Dragons, right? And that's very interesting. It also really makes me think. I know for a fact there are, I'm not sure which cultures, but I know for a fact there are cultures, I think some are around even today. There aren't many left, but for a long time, and I think even today, there are cultures where they're like, hey, you can't take my picture because you take my soul, right? And, and I think we in the modern world are like, oh, what a silly, antiquated idea. But now I'm like, you guys might be absolutely right. Or like, yeah, wow, yeah, you're right. Like, and it's really fascinating because it's incredible, right? Because, like, I think the second you turn the camera on, D&D ends. It finished. It's done. It's not what Gary intended, right? I don't think people shouldn't be recording Dungeons and Dragons activity. It's not a D&D campaign. It's not real, right? But it is an incredibly close depiction of what somebody could do. And that has inspired millions of people to go do it themselves. So Mercer has done an incredibly valuable thing. But the reality is, that's not Dungeons and Dragons. And it's not because they're not playing right or any of that. It's like, I now believe, this is my humble opinion, the second you turn a camera on, that is not Dungeons and Dragons. That is a depiction of what Dungeons and Dragons can be, right? And it's not valued at 0. It's actually valued 95 to 99, right? It's not low value. It's high value, but it is hierarchy. It's below, right? And your kitchen table game that is not recorded has 100 times more value and can do real things that Mercer can never do, because that's a performative show, right? And it has been incredibly helpful to us. I don't want to say it's at zero, but it is lesser, right? And not like way down, but just slightly down, but it is down, right? Like, and I could talk about that kind of nuance here, because like we're talking about, the deeper aspects of Dungeons and Dragons. It's really, really fascinating. I also want to just explain too, it is like, this is very real. The second you turn the camera on, man, you would not believe how restricted your speech becomes, right? So I just, you guys aware, I cut easily 10 to 50 videos a year that I never post, right? I'm like, oh no, there's too much salt in that, or whatever it is, right? The other day I did a video and I said race exclusion is specifically a value of the OSR. Said that flat out, right? And then I took it down, and the reason why was people were like, what? That's, outrageous. You think people who play in the OSR don't want specific races of people at their table? And I was like, no, that's not at all what I meant. I meant that OSR, the vast majority of them, in my opinion, are like super into, I do not allow tieflings and dragonborns and kenders in my game. Right? They have every OSR person I've ever met has a race exclusion list. It's not actually races of IRL people who can sit at their table. It's races that can be in the game, right? And get this, I'm freaked out whenever you want to exclude any race, whether they're IRL or fantasy. It's a bad road to go down, right? But I had to delete that video because people did not understand that distinction, right? And that's the other thing that I'm telling you is, you would not believe. I know, because I do it every day. I do it multiple times a day, right? Like, I know how your words can fall on people. And I'll tell you right now, there's no question. I think I would not be surprised if Critical Role people are now media. In fact, I know it. They have sensitivity. They have sensitivity advisors, right? They are media, like quite literally media trained, and they have to guard every single word. What you are seeing is incredibly constrained, right? And their freedom is gone. Their soul, the soul of that D&D game is gone. The second you turn on the camera, it's no longer D&D. It's no longer Dungeons and Dragons. It's a show that depicts what Dungeons and Dragons actually looks like, right? Which does have value. All that's my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.